Okay, the stream has been started. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the NFDI talk. My name is Kurt Willies, and I will moderate today's session. The talk, as always, will be live streamed and saved on our YouTube channel. And then after the talk, we invite you to ask questions and to discuss the topics. You can ask either via the chat or also you can raise your virtual hand. This interactive part will not be streamed to YouTube, and also it will not be recorded. In today's talk, Michael Selzer and Christian Langenbach will present Introduction to NFDI-RFC, Request for Comments, a concept for standardization of RDM, Research Data Management. The talk will be given by Michael, and Christian will also be available for the discussion. Michael Selzer is co-spokesperson of NFDI for ING, or is it INCH? I know both versions, NFDI for INCH, representing the materials science and engineering community. He leads work on research data infrastructure and services, for example, with the CADI format platform to make engineering research data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. You know this. Christian Langenbach is Research Data Manager and Department Head of Research Data Management at German Aerospace Center, DLR. In NFDI for ING, she acts as co-spokesperson and is member of the steering group and participates in the consortium's task force Training, Education and Standardization, TES. Through promoting open science and data accessibility, he supports data-intensive and fair research data management in engineering at DLR. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and the possibility to present our work, which were started in the first founding period of NFDI for INCH. And it's about a concept which is called Request for Comments to help and support the standardization of research data management. I give a short agenda. So I want to introduce the NFDI-RFC standardization service as we have imagined it. So as we want to now present it and give it to discussion for a broad audience. I want to present the standardization stage, how it can be used to establish standards. What we already have developed as part of that concept, so the first drafts, which are still open for discussion and still need some improvement, but are now open for the public discussion and for comments from the community. A short example how we think a new NFDI-RFC can be created, what steps are necessary, and how that should be organized. Overall, the contribution to NFDI's objectives, so to make a better research data infrastructure available for the community, for the researchers, and also the next steps, what we want to do to continue our development in that concept and in the support of standardization. What is NFDI-RFC standardization service? It's based on the IETF Internet Engineering Task Force concept. This is well known to everybody, even if you don't know it, because this is the ground basis for all communication inside of the internet. So every protocol, every service which is available there are captured by any kind of RFC, and without that RFC concept, the internet will not work as it is nowadays. And we want to establish a similar service, especially focusing on research data management. The origin comes from the NFDI for INCH, but the vision is to have, after all the founding periods, one NFDI. So the goal is to establish that service not only for the engineering scientists, but also for the whole NFDI community. one part is to extract best practice examples for broader reuse from all the initiatives. So every initiative has their own working groups, their own ideas, and they yeah are developed to a certain stage and should now be used or usable by other groups, by other communities. And for that, that standardization service should provide a platform to centralize and collect all that developments and make them visible for a broader range of people to adapt that, but also to present them for other communities as well, because a lot of developments might be useful for other communities, and without a centralized platform to communicate that, they might be not found by other communities. And for that, the goal is to have established a new service inside of the NFDI framework. For that, we want to communicate that now. So we start to go to the public with our concept and find supporters for our vision to establish that uniform platform for developing and publishing quasi-standards and guidelines for research data management. And for that, we have also the mission that NFDI-RFC concept establish a coordinated, sustainable, and widely accepted standardization service for RDM across disciplines. Yeah, for that we want to come out of the NFDI for Inch community and also present that to other consortia and also other sections inside of NFDI. So that hopefully they will also adapt that service and use it for their standardization processes. What is the goal here to present in that service? This is a formalized text document. So we have defined some specifications how that technical document should look like. And it also should address more or less some technical issues which arose around research data management, from simple tasks to very complex services. So the main focus here is really on research data management, not like in the EATF where we have that internet and all that protocols. Here we want to focus especially on that research data management. The topics can be domain specific, so it's fine if someone from the biologics has some ideas which might be more related to biology than to literature research. Yeah, so it's also fine to have that domain specific topics. But it's also good to present them maybe in a way that also the whole RDM community can benefit from that. But this is an evolutionary process. This is also part of that concept, that not one standard for all the time is established. It can be iteratively developed and also improved over time, and new RFC maybe come by getting more experience in that domain and can be improved with new insights. So what can be described? This is just a short list. It could be a specification of services, yeah, like a terminology service, how an API should look like for a terminology service, what features should be provided by a terminology service, and so on. But it can also be a more semantic thing, like a description of metadata schema. What are the mandatory fields for a metadata scheme, which should be handled by everyone, maybe, yeah. It can also describe workflows, how to handle data across the research process, and also data handling in general. How should it be annotated? How should it be compressed, archived, on which kind of storage space it should be located, and so on. Yeah, these are some possible topics here. yeah, part of the vision especially is that it is open for everyone. So we don't want to restrict it. It should be not restricted to sections. It should not be restricted to consortia. So everyone is invited to contribute to that. But it should be promoted through the consortia or later on, especially through the sections. So they should accept it, that it should be published in the series of the NFDI-RFCs. And as I mentioned before, it's not a standard itself. It's a request for comment. So it's a suggestion, and it should be a low threshold service. So not too much barriers to get something presented. Yeah, it should be formalized. It should be technical. It should be peer reviewed. But it should not give you too much restriction that it's not accepted because of some doubts in the usability, for example, because the main goal is here that the community afterwards decide if it's a good standard, it's easy to adapt, because if it's easy to adapt, people will use it. If the people use it, it will get a broad visibility in the community. It should not be a supplement, or it should be a supplement to other standardization procedures, such as DIN or the Wissenschaftsrat. So we don't want to um, uh, uh, make them unnecessary, so they should be fit in that processes. The whole standardization should be benefit from that procedure to establish it in a well-defined standard in the long run. And for that, we want to work together also with that other standardization organizations. Here is how we think that process can look like. So in the beginning, a person or a group starts to write a draft, a first version of their NFDI RFC, and this is submitted to the section. The section do a content review, discussion, and editing of that RFC. So this is more or less mentioned if it really has a well-defined structure. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the community at the end should decide if it's adapted or not. So the section should just check if it makes sense to present that topic in the series of the NFDI RFC. Based on that decision, an RDM expert group is established. This is a small group of experts. They do the technical review. So is it really possible to do all the technical steps inside of the document and make that at some point possibly working? And if this is the case, then it is submitted to the NFDI RFC editor, which makes that document in the draft mode publicly available. And now the community can give a review and comments on that, if they understand it, if everything is clear, if it could be adapted, or there might be some ideas for improvement. And that feedback goes back to all of that roles. There is a discussion about the document, some improvements, some change in the description. And if all of that will be successful, then the document at the end will be accepted, and the NFDI RFC editor gives that document free, and it is published in the series of the NFDI RFC. It should get a number just in a row. So there is no versioning of the documents. If a new document arose, it gets a new number, and there is a way to say, okay, an old version is now outdated. There is a newer version available, which has some improvements or some more features described. And based on that, different stages appears in the document. So the highest one, so the most established one, is the standards track. This is an NFDI standards track document, which means that the content is technically measured. It's already adapted by the community. And it's known that it has a big benefit to the science community and can be used in a daily basis. The second stage is the best current practices. This is supporting the way how to do stuff. So it's a suggestion, more like a recommendation how to do stuff. It's not yet maybe a standard because it's not available yet in all details for the whole community, but there is already a good way to use that. And there are other categories beside the standards track. So this is not a standards track specification, and there can be three different types. One is informational. So this is just describing an issue. Yeah. So maybe you have not yet a solution, but you have identified that there is something which is very complicated to describe and it should be attended. So you can say this is informational. Something which describes some historical issues. Yeah. So if you have, for example, some data formats which are not common anymore, but they might be on some storage spaces still available. So you can describe how that old data files can be recovered, can be used still if they are outdated from the technical point of view, but maybe not from the content. And for the early beginning of some standards, we have the experimental stage. Here it's, you suggest some ideas. Yeah, you have not completely described all the technical issues, but you have already some ideas to solve at least some of them. So you can say this is an experimental description. This is a first starting point to go in the direction of a standard. And then we have the measured state. This means this is really the highest standard. This is technically measured, so and adapted. And this has the special meaning that it should be a standard for all consortia, so for the whole community. And for that, the goal is that that kind of RFC are submitted to the Wissenschaftsrat and or the dean or other standardization committees, which then decide in their process, in their concept, in their way to accept standards about that technical specification and adapt it in their way, in their way to accept standards in their community. So it's a way to start that long way to the standardize some new services and technical specifications. And to get a platform for that, the IETF has developed over years a real big system which is called Data Tracker, and we investigated that and looked around and saw that it's very complex and very specific to the IETF workflow. And after some time, we decided, okay, we want to go more in the specification part and not in that platform part. So we decided to use GitLab as a communication platform because a lot of features are already available. You can do your own project there. You have version control on that system. You can do merge requests. You can do some issues on that, so comment on some documents. So this is already everything available here, and for that we choose to use that platform here. And I just want to give a short overview of that. For that I need to stop that. So share it again. Okay, now you see my web browser, I hope. This is the Git repository. This is hosted as an NFDI for Inch service on the Git lab instance of RWTH Aachen. And here you see 4 categories. So we have here the overview. This is a brief description of everything what I just mentioned. Also some hints to the different documents which are already available as draft. and all the steps which needs to take care about to build your own NFDI-RFC. We have built a glossary. This has some definitions which are related to RDM, but also to NFDI-RFC. So here a short summary and overview of some important vocabulary in that field. And we have that published category, and you see here we have not yet something published. So we plan a workshop in the near future where we invite all the possible stakeholders in that standardization process to discuss with us the open drafts, which are here located. So we have a draft section, and here we have already our 5 suggested drafts for the first RFC documents, which describes the concept of NFDI-RFC itself. So this is part of the concept, that the concept is described in its own way. So here are that 5 documents. I will explain the contents a little bit more and later. And we have also an NFDI RFC draft template repository. This is the starting point to build your own NFDI RFC. Okay, now I go back to the presentation. So, what I just shown are our first draft, so not yet published documents for the NFDI RFC. They are already numbered, so we have the NFDI RFC 1. Numbering is typically done afterwards, but for us to organize it a little bit easier in the draft mode for that first documents, we have already given that numbers here before publication. So this is about the technical publication service. That first document describes what I've shown in the diagram, what stages a document must fulfill, and how the workflow is to do that publication process, what roles are involved, what stages are involved, and so on. Then we have some guidelines for provisioning of RDM. This describes what criteria should that service achieve. What parts of the process should be mandatory, are important, and why they are necessary to establish that service. Then this is more for the authors. Now we have NFDI RFC 3 and 4. The first one is the style guide. This describes how the structure of an NFDI RFC should look like. So we have a table of content, which has some mandatory and some optional parts in it. So a certain structure, some hints on the wording, what is the meaning in that, because yeah, we are talking about standardization. Sometimes wording is here very important to be as precise as possible. And we have an orders guide. This is more, yeah, a kind of best practice or a recommendation. This gives some hints how to structure the document, what sections should be filled with what kind of content, what should be recognized, and so on. And it gives also a step-by-step guide at some points how to go to that first draft and how to work with that document during the process. Then we have the NFDI RFC 5. This is the current process for handling NFDI RFC errata reports. This is the only exception here, that if you have some errata, so some corrections in the published RFC, which are not in the sense that you find some technical processes are not working as expected, more some kind of typos or some really misunderstandable sentences or so they can be adjusted without changing the goal of the original NFDI-RFC. If that is the case, then an errata can be established and published. And there's also a process behind that, which is described in that document. And this is the intermediate stage between publishing a document, making some adjustments, and before updating with a really new NFDI-RFC. Yeah, as I mentioned before, we don't want to establish versioning of that documents. If we have a new concept, a new description, a new way to handle stuff, then there should be a really completely new NFDI-RFC with a new number. And I've also shown that in the Git repo, we have an NFDI-RFC template established, and we have now a working group for data management plans, which tries to use that template as a first experimental working group. There is a step-by-step explanation how to do the fork and how to do all the steps to establish your own repository with a fork of the template, and how you should adapt the README and how you should organize the documents. This is something what I've not yet mentioned. We suggest that the concept can be used in English as well as in German. So every document what we have provided now are available in both languages. There is only one mandatory. So if you think English is more international, then you can publish it in English. But we think maybe some communities has some benefit of doing the publication in German as well. So we want to accept in that service both languages side by side. Milestones, what we have already achieved. As I have presented here, the basic concept and the structure are finalized. We have still some open to-dos like publication platform and so on, but the major part is already available. As I've shown, the documents are publicly available on GitHub. So the URL is here visible, so you can go there. You don't need to log in to see the document. And we have already started to discuss with some groups. I already have mentioned the DMP working group, but we also try to get in touch with the metadata group, which tries to establish a suggestion for the whole NFDI for metadata standard. And we have also some other groups where we try to get involved and to make them a first-time user of our concept. Future milestones. This is what we want to now achieve. Yeah, it's a concept developed inside of NFDI 4-inch, but we want to establish it for the whole community. And for that, we organize a workshop from the 9th to the 10th of March this year. And we invite all stakeholders to participate in that workshop. So we are open to discussion. We are open to adjustments to the concepts. But the goal after that workshop is that we get in the drafts in a shape that we can accept them and make it public as they are, so that they are really the basis for establishing that service as a new service inside of NFDI. And yeah, this is the goal, what we now want to achieve after that workshop, that yeah, we have a way that we can also find the stakeholders inside of NFDI to support that. So this is especially the sections, but also other consortia which are still founded and can benefit from that service. Now this is a short summary of the steps, how that process would work. So far that we suggest that workflow, we are still improving it. So we have the first feedback, what is working or not working in the expected manner. So the first step would be to identify a topic and find a group of authors to work on that document. Then you need to get in contact to the NFDI-RFC editor, which now in a conventionary way, Christian Langenbach and me are in the first place, because the service is not yet established. In the long run, we need to find someone who takes over that role and is yeah, selected or elected by NFDI, by the sections, to supervise that process. And this editor can grant access, write access to the Git repository, so build fork. So we've done that for the DMP group. This is not yet published visible, but it's already there, a fork where the authors can work with, and the editor can supervise that and can also look into that draft. There's the author's guide to support the first steps. Yeah, there is a certain way to name that. So yeah, we hope that we find a lot of working groups to use that service. So at some point, it's maybe not that easy to keep the overview of all the document drafts. For that, we suggest a certain way to name the drafts. And based on the author's guide as well, the template should be adapted to fulfill the needs which are suggested in the author's guide. And then you have the main part free for your own ideas. So this is the body of the document. Here, the structure is mainly free. Yeah, so you can define your own sections. There is no recommendations what is in the body part. Only the heading and the appendix part is more or less fixed. That there are some chapters which are mandatory, but the body itself is free to everyone to adapt it for their own needs. So what are the contribution to the NFDI's objectives? Building a coordinated networked RFC standardization service to develop sustainable interoperable RDM. So I think this is really one of the things what all the consortia are working since the first founding. So we want to have services which can work together and the people can benefit by using them for their own work. We want to have something which handles subject-specific needs of RDM. Yeah, so all the domains have their different needs. Not all researchers in all domains have the same way to work and the same stuff to use in their research process. You have experimentalists, you have simulation people, you have people doing more or less research in history or in other domains. Yeah, so you have a lot of different ways to work with your, let's say, samples, yeah, in your domain, and how to organize them, and that should be covered in specific ways, and that should be documented here as well. Yeah, and for that, we want to establish also processes and procedures which are accepted throughout all the scientific disciplines. Yeah, if we are in similar domains and we are in different consortia, yeah, maybe we have similar but not the same ideas. So it's a way to harmonize that, to bring people together and make them work in the same way, in the same procedures, and so make it more compatible and more easy to use over the whole community. And here is more or less our outlook for the next step. So this is what we want to start also with that talk here. We want to get feedback from the community to the actual drafts. So what do you think about our ideas? Is that what you expect? Is that what you want to adapt? Is that something where you can imagine to contribute? Do you think this helps your domain to standardize that and harmonize things and make them more easily work together? And for that, we want to activate that service for the NFDI sections and consortia. So I think this is the biggest players here in the round, beside NFDI-EV, so the directorium of NFDI. And especially, yeah, this is something for the broad audience. The RDM community itself needs to adapt that, so we can write as much as possible documents, but if no one is using that or reusing it, it makes no sense. So the community is here our biggest player to adapt all of that. And for that, as I mentioned before, we have organized that workshop and hope that we find enough stakeholders to discuss that and finalize that concept. And we still look for a publication platform. Yeah, we have found GitLab as a working platform for handling the draft up to the point for the publication. But it should also be presented in a repository, let's say. Yeah, so the documents should be collected also in a well-readable format like PDF or HTML. And it should be searchable, findable, so that you can easily search through the existing documents and find RFCs which match your needs. And for that, yeah, you are invited to join us in the workshop. And now we are open for questions, comments, and further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and also to Christian for this great and very helpful work on a very important and very challenging topic. So now, before we start with the question and discussion session, we say goodbye to our viewers on YouTube. The next NFDI talk will take place in 4 weeks, March the 2nd. And in this talk, Mark Dörr of NFDI for CAT, the Consortium for Catalysis, will give an introduction on LARA, a semantic AI-driven general purpose research assistant. So I will now stop the YouTube stream, just a second.